All right, let's talk a minute about the Dallas Cowboys. We're going to cover a lot of information here, including Dak Prescott, George Pickens, why the Micah thing still doesn't make sense, and what the Cowboys do going forward. So just run with me for a minute here. Look, we always try and do predictive data and predictive results on this show based on the data and information. And if you follow me on Twitter, and you should, and if you're liking this show, make sure you hit like and subscribe wherever you get your podcasts, including on YouTube. You saw me put this out on my Twitter feed yesterday, and it was basically that you should expect a big game from Dak Prescott, because this is what I put out before the game against the Commanders. In his career, Dak Prescott in home games against the Commanders is 6-0 with a 17 touchdown passes against 0 interceptions, and the team has averaged over 41.3 points per game. Well, what happened Sunday in a home game against the Commanders? Dak Prescott moved to 7-0. He's now thrown 20 touchdown passes and no interceptions, and they put up 44 points. So the predictive data, once again, rings true against what's going on against the Washington Commanders. The other side of the equation is they got CeeDee Lamb back, so obviously you expected those numbers to do what they did, and they did very well. And it was a huge win for the Cowboys, which got them back to 500 after last week, where they inexplicably found a way to lose to Bryce Young and the Carolina Panthers. So the up-and-down roller coaster year of the Dallas Cowboys continues. Dak Prescott is playing at an MVP level. There is no question about it. He won't win the MVP if the Cowboys don't stick the playoffs. Look what happened with Joe Burrow last year. As well as Josh Allen played, you could look at the statistical numbers for both Lamar Jackson and Joe Burrow, and they were better than Josh Allen's if you wanted to choose to look at it that way. I'm not taking anything away from Josh, but the point is, if you don't make the playoffs as a quarterback, you're not winning the MVP. It's just that simple. No, by the way, we should open up the MVP balloting to more than just quarterbacks. Separate issue entirely. I digress. So what we told you, based on predictive data, would play out, played out. So what does this mean for the Cowboys going forward? Because one of the best moves of any team this offseason was the Cowboys trading for George Pickens. And I will admit I had major doubts about it. Major doubts, because George Pickens, throughout his career with the Pittsburgh Steelers, has shown flashes of being an absolute ball hawk, unstoppable, athletic wide receiver, and also shown signs of, I don't feel like playing today, and I'm going to loaf through this game. You can go back and look at the tape of the game last year, Sunday night game between the Cowboys and the Steelers, where Pickens did not care. He was just jogging through the entire thing when he knew the play wasn't coming to him. But to his credit, and to the Cowboys' credit, it's turned out to be a great trade. Great trade. And now you have Dak playing at an MVP level with a good tight end in Jake Ferguson, a decent offensive line, finally a running game with Javonte Williams, and now you have George Pickens and CeeDee Lamb to choose from, and Kevontae Turpin, by the way. Those are good options for the Dallas Cowboys. But it speaks to the bigger issue that when it comes to the Dallas Cowboys, and if you're a Cowboys fan, you just need to be honest about this, okay? You need to be honest about this. This is a team that doesn't have a plan. Now, why do I say that? Well, let me explain. You traded for George Pickens when he was in the last year of his rookie contract, which means unless you want to open up the vault, it's going to be very difficult to keep George Pickens in Dallas next year. Now, granted, you can tag him and all that kind of stuff, but when you tag somebody, you have to then pay him the going rate for a wide receiver for 1 year, which is an astronomical number. And if the Cowboys had concerns about trying to pay Micah Parsons, which, by the way, we'll get to in a second, the last thing you want to do is strap yourself, or don't have enough cash, by making sure George Pickens stays around on a 1-year deal, because you got balloon payments coming up for Dak Prescott and CeeDee Lamb. It will come down a little bit in year 2 of those contracts, but still, that's a lot of money out there. So when I say the Cowboys don't have a plan and don't have a clue on how to build a team, this is what I'm trying to say. When you make a trade for George Pickens on the last year of a deal, you're basically saying, hey man, let's see what happens this year and we'll figure it out after that. We're not sure what we're going to be and how we're going to look, so let's just bring this guy in for 1 year and see what happens, which means you're kind of all in for this year, right? You are focused just on 2025. So if you're focused just on 2025, then the idea of trading away your best defensive player is the dumbest thing you could have possibly done. And you go look at the Cowboys defense this year. While Dak is playing at an MVP level and they've had the number 1 offense for most of the season, The Cowboys defense played better against a completely injury-riddled Commanders team last Sunday, and Jaden Daniels had to leave the game. They're not very good defensively at all. In fact, they're terrible. They were the 32nd ranked defense out of 32 heading into that game Sunday at home against the Commanders. So when I say the Cowboys don't have a plan on how to build a team, these two moves sum that up perfectly. You trade for George Pickens because you want to be all in for this year, because you think you have enough this year to get where you want to go after an injury-filled season last year. We saw you fire Mike McCarthy and bring in Brian Schottenheimer. But you can't do that and then on the same time frame and the same hand, then trade away your best defensive player in his prime. And oh, by the way, the Cowboys have been horrendous with pressure this season. One of the worst teams in the NFL in finding constant pressure and finding sacks to bring the quarterback down to the ground. They were a little better in the game against the Commanders, but they weren't great. So we have two conflicting things going on here, okay? This is the most important thing. When you trade for somebody that you know you're probably not going to re-sign after this season, you're like, hey, let's see how far we can go this season. And so far with George Pickens, that has been lights out. Solid pick, solid choice. He carried the Cowboys and Dak when CeeDee Lamb got hurt. CeeDee's back, and now those two together are absolutely cooking. But at the same time, you don't give away your best player on defense. Oh, by the way, in the win by the Packers over the Cardinals on Sunday, had the first 3-sack game of his career. And it would have been a 4th sack if he wasn't flagged for a hip drop, which, by the way, another separate issue. He goes down statistically with 3 sacks in that game, the first 3-sack game of his career. And if you watch that game at all, it wasn't just the sacks, it was the constant pressure. Micah was a difference maker in that game for the Green Bay Packers. So when you look at the good teams in the NFL, the good teams that have structure, that have stability within the organization, from the coaching staff to the general manager, they have plans, and they stick by those plans. Whether it's the Ravens with Eric DeCosta and John Harbaugh, even though they're struggling this year, I understand that. Historically, they've been very consistent and very good. Whether it's Sean McDermott and Bean, the general manager in Buffalo, they've been very good. Obviously, what we're talking about in Kansas City with Andy Reid and Patrick Mahomes and Brett Veach, the GM, very good, very consistent. They have a plan. Same thing in Philadelphia with Howie Roseman and Nick Sirianni, even though Nick at times seems like he's on a different planet. They have a plan, and they're sticking to it. So what's the plan for the Cowboys? Like, someone tell me what the cohesive plan is for the Dallas Cowboys. When you're all in by one move, getting George Pickens, and then you're as out as you can possibly. I don't care what Jerry Jones says. And let's be clear about this. What you say and what you do are two very different things. Last offseason, Jerry Jones said he was all in, and they signed a long snapper. They weren't all in at all. This year, he keeps talking about, look at all the pass rushers you've got. Well, yeah, you have a lot of them, and they suck. Okay? They suck. That's the bigger issue. Granted, you have a bunch of them, but a bunch aren't any good. I'd rather have one really good one, which you had in Micah Parsons. So when you trade away someone like Micah, you're doing the exact opposite from a team-building structural standpoint of what you did when you brought in George Pickens. And here's where it gets really interesting. You know, when the discussions about what are you going to do with Micah began, last season, Jerry Jones was talking about his agent, David Mulugheta, who, by the way, look him up, arguably the best agent in the NFL. If not, he's top 3 at worst. And Jerry made the faux pas of saying, I don't even know who this guy is. Facepalm extraordinaire. How do you not know who this guy is? Or you do know who he is, and you're just taking a shot at him to try and see if you can break his will and bring him to the table. Hey, guess what? That worked not at all. Instead, you found a way, David did, to get your client the highest paid non-quarterback contract in the NFL, $47.5 million per for the Green Bay Packers. So I don't know what the plan is for the Dallas Cowboys. And sadly, the Cowboys don't know what the plan is. So now, okay, you see that, oh my God, this offense that we have is unbelievably good. We got to find a way to see if we can shore up that defense. when you had a guy that would have shored up that defense and you let him go in his prime. So now you look and see what's out there. Well, Myles Garrett is locked into that $40 million a year contract. I don't think you're getting him out of Cleveland, especially at that price. It would be the most Cowboys thing ever in the world. In the world. If they let Micah Parsons go and decided to bring in Myles Garrett, who's 4 years older than Micah Parsons. Now, Myles Garrett is a phenomenal football player. Probably has a couple good years left in him. There's no question about it. But why would you let a Micah Parsons go and bring in a Myles Garrett? 4 years older and a little more wear and tear on the tire and making over $40 million. Doesn't seem to make a lot of sense. So what else could you do out there? Well, what about Max Crosby? Right? Let's take a look at Max Crosby. Signed that 3-year contract extension in March. Now, Max is 28, again, a few years older than Micah Parsons, but has been very productive for a very bad organization with the Raiders. And again, they just got smoked in historical ways by the Kansas City Chiefs. That was a cat playing with a chew toy for 4 quarters Sunday at Arrowhead. It wasn't a game. That was a fight. The ref would have called it probably after it was 21-0. Guys, we don't need to sit through 30 more minutes of this shit. Let's everybody go home and be safe, okay? But by rule, you got to play 4 quarters. The Chiefs called off the dog. They could have won 50-0 if they wanted to in that game. I mean, at one point they were inside the 5-yard line and they just ran it 4 straight times. Didn't even try and kick a field goal. That's how bad it was. That's how pathetic it was. And at the end of that game, the Chiefs passed the 2-minute warning. We're in victory formation. The Raiders had all 3 of their timeouts and the 2-minute warning. They didn't call a single one. They were like, let's just get the hell out of here, man. That's how bad it was. So that's the situation that Max Crosby is stuck in, right? So maybe you think, okay, see if we can make a deal for Max Crosby. Max Crosby tweaked his knee in that game. Who knows how serious that is? Hopefully it's not for him. He's a great player. I love him. And he said, I want to win. And then he signed the big deal with the Raiders. It's amazing how money changes things. Myles Garrett, the same thing. I don't want to go from Cleveland to Canton. Here's $40 million. I want to go from Cleveland to Canton. It's amazing. When most of the time, when athletes say it's not about the money, it's about the money. So Max took it to stay with a shitty organization. Myles took it, stay with a shitty organization. But this is where the Cowboys' lack of a plan comes into place. If you're really all in, you find a way to make it work for Micah this year, and then you worry about it next year. And you try and appease the player, and you try and appease the agent to see if we can all get on the same page. And Jerry Jones decided to do the exact opposite. He was like frickin' Brad Pitt at the end of Once Upon a Time in Hollywood when he gets the flamethrower out and absolutely torches the Manson family girl that was trying to kill him. Just he lit the whole thing on fire, man, and burnt it down. And here's where it gets even more interesting. Because George is having a renaissance season with the Dallas Cowboys, George Pickens. You know who George Pickens' agent is? That's right. It's David Mulugheta. And Jerry was asked about this after the Cowboys went over the Commanders. He said, well, I'm not going to let that be an issue because what I did with Micah, and again, it's not Micah with him, it's Micah. I'm going to let what I did with Micah was about dollars and cents regardless of the agent. Bullshit. You took it personal. You tried to work around the agent. And if you think it's not going to be an impediment, that's fine. But you know what a negotiation is? It's a two-way conversation. 2 people have to be on the same side. Do you think for 1 second that David Mulugheta, considering what he had to go through with his client Micah Parsons, is going to give Jerry Jones and the Cowboys the benefit of the doubt when it comes to George Pickens? Like, he's going to do him a solid? Come on. If you believe that, I've got some land to sell you in the Everglades. It'll go up in value, okay? Don't buy the bullshit. Jerry Jones has dug his own grave with David Mulugheta as long as he's the general manager. And agents are like elephants. They have an incredible memory. And they will not forget when they felt slighted or they felt their client was slighted. And in this situation, Jerry Jones did the impossible. He managed to upset the player as well as the agent. And Mulugheta is one of the best in the business. And he is going to take that slight, and he'll present it the right way. Like I've seen him on all the talk shows after the Micah Parsons deal. He was very calm, very professional. And, he says, hey, I'm just trying to do the best business I can. But in the back of his mind, he's like, I'm going to do the best business I can, and screw you, buddy. Because you pretended like you didn't know who I am. You didn't know who I am. I'm the best in the business. Look, if you're the best at anything, you're a competitive person. I don't care whether you're a race walker or a freaking belly flopper or an athlete or an agent. You know how you get the best? You become a killer. You become a killer. And you remember everything. And you remember the people that you felt didn't treat you with respect. So while Jerry can say whatever he wants about how he dealt with Micah won't affect his relationship with George Pickens, who shares the same agent, that's only 50% of the equation. The other half is, what does the agent feel? And what does the player feel? And what is the agent telling the player? George Pickens is set for a massive payday. So it would be the most Jerry Jones things ever, to find a way to write a big ticket item for George Pickens and have another wide receiver and leave himself bereft of defensive talent and not find a way to get a deal done for anybody else. He might do that. And David Mulugheta has the leverage to make that happen. And if that happens once again, I say to you as a Cowboy fan out there, what's the plan? Do you have a plan, or are you just winging it? Because what you've done with George Pickens and what you did with Micah Parsons, one signing says you're going this way, the other signing says you're going that way. And I don't care what you, Jerry, or the Cowboys front office says. I see what you do. And I see the actions. And I see the consequences of the decisions you've made. And it's been disastrous for the defensive side of the ball. And it's been exceptional for the offensive side of the ball. And you know what the most important thing is in football? To have a great team. And you guys don't have a good team. You have one side of the ball that is off the charts good, and you have one side of the ball that so far has been historically bad. And it's been made bad by the decisions you made to try and build a team that don't coincide with the other decisions you tried to make to build a team. You can't have it both ways. You can't say on one hand, let's bring in George Pickens to see what the best we can be this year. And then on the other hand, we're going to get rid of the best pass rusher right now, edge presence in the NFL in his prime, and we're still all in for this year. That is complete and unadulterated bullshit. Don't believe it. The Cowboys' biggest problem is not their players, is that they don't have a plan, a cohesive plan on how to construct a winning team. And until they figure that out, the Cowboys are going to be what they've always been since Super Bowl 30, a team looking for the championship answers, and they haven't found it in 3 decades. And that's straight facts only.